Welcome to Heavy Source. We're going to be doing the daily Bible verse, and then we're going to be reading the Bible. Then we're going to be doing the synopsis with Kimberly.
Not Snape.
Maybe when we're reading,
And then we're going to be reading Around the World in 80 Days. So I hope you guys enjoy. We are going to be reading from Proverbs 19:17 through 18. Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed. Discipline your son, for there is hope. Do not set your heart on putting him to death. That is the entire verse. Now let's go straight to the Bible time.
That was actually
The entire two verses.
Hello! How are you doing today? We are in Romans chapter 3. Thank you, one person, for being here. We appreciate you. We're in Romans chapter 3. This is the English Standard Version of the Holy Scripture. And let me begin. Then what advantage has the Jew? Or what is the value of circumcision? Much in every way. To begin with, the Jews were entrusted with the oracles of God. What if some were unfaithful? Does their faithlessness nullify the faithfulness of God? By no means. Let God be true, though every one were a liar, as it is written, that you may be justified in your words and prevail when you are judged. But if our unrighteousness serves to show the righteousness of the Lord of God, what shall we say? That God is unrighteous to inflict wrath on us? I speak in a human way. By no means. For then how could God judge the world? But if through my lie God's truth abounds to his glory, why am I still being condemned as a sinner? And why not do evil that good may come? As some people slanderously charge us with saying their condemnation is just. What then? Are we Jews any better off? No, not at all, for we have already charged that all, both Jews and Greeks, are under sin, as it is written. None is righteous, no, not one. No one understands, no one seeks for God. All have turned aside, together they have become worthless. No one does good, not even one. Their throat is an open grave. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of asps is under their lips. Their mouth is full of curses and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. In their paths are ruin and misery, and the way of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be stopped, and the whole world may be held accountable to God. For by works of the law no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin. But now the righteousness of God has been manifested apart from the law, although the law and the prophets bear witness to it. The righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe. For there is no distinction, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and are justified by his grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God put forward as a propitiation by his blood to be received by faith. This was to show God's righteousness, because in his divine forbearance he had passed over former sins. It was to show his righteousness at the present time, so that he might be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. Then what becomes of our boasting? It is excluded. But by what kind of law? By a law of works? No, but by the law of faith. For we hold that one is justified by faith apart from works of the law. Or is God the God of Jews only? Is he not the God of Gentiles also? Yes, of Gentiles also, since God is one. Who will justify the circumcised by faith and the uncircumcised through faith? Do we then overthrow the law by this faith? By no means. On the contrary, we uphold the law. That is the end of Romans chapter 3. So tomorrow will be Romans chapter 4. Big surprise there. So now we're on Around the World in 80 Days. We're on chapter 6. Real quickly recapping what we read yesterday. We read 3 chapters, 3, 4, and 5. And basically they were having a conversation, and something about a bank robbery, something about actually, was the robbery in the former chapter?
Yeah. Yeah, they were saying, here, just let me
Well,
do it.
here's Kimberly to say what happened. I can't figure out a way to kill him yet anyway.
How about this? The police come and find him and then take him into custody. Boom.
The train fell off the track and smashed into
Okay. So I'm in my Halloween costume. I'm missing the gems though. So what happened was they were playing a game and talking about this robbery. And they were like, so nowadays you can get practically anywhere, and then suddenly like the conversation turned into how fast you could get around the world, and then he's like, I bet I could get around the world in 80 days. And then everybody's like, wait, what? And then he's like, yeah, I'll stake 20,000 pounds on it. So
No, what's his prize for it, though? Don't worry about it, Daniel.
You can do it.
Daniel,
So
you're not doing this.
he goes over early, before 12 o'clock. He goes over and tells his servant, who he just hired, hey, we're doing this now. And he's like, wait, what? You're not supposed to be here till 12. What's going on?
It wasn't. Was it 12?
Midnight.
Is that when he's supposed to get home?
Yep.
Oh, I see.
He gets home at midnight. That's what it said.
Normally.
Yeah. And he was like completely freaked out, and he's like, you haven't left in years. You haven't done anything contrary to your schedule since you were like, I don't even know how long. So he was a bit surprised about that. So they get on the train, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, who's gonna do it? Is he gonna do it? Or is he gonna suffer a bunch of, is he gonna suffer a bunch of, delays and lose the 80-day challenge? So, a bunch of people concluded that he's not gonna make it. And this one dude, there's only one dude supporting him right now. And he's like, yep, he can do it. And everybody else is like, dude, you're crazy. So, he goes over, and then the police are like, this guy, he matches the description of the bank robber. Maybe he robbed the bank and is using this bet as a cover-up. So now the police are after him. Yay! I'm going to hand it off to Dad, who's going to read a story.
And the police are after them means there was a telegram that came from Suez to London. I've found the bank robber Phileas Fogg. Send without delay. Warrant of arrest to Bombay. Fix detective. And coincidentally, the next chapter is chapter 6, in which Fix the detective betrays a very natural impatience. The circumstances under which this telegraphic dispatch about Phileas Fogg was sent were as follows. The steamer Mongolia, belonging to the Peninsular and Oriental Company, built of iron, of 2,800 tons burden and 500 horsepower, was due at 11 o'clock a.m. on Wednesday, the 9th of October at Suez. The Mongolia plied regularly between Brindisi and Bombay via the Suez Canal, and was one of the fastest steamers belonging to the company, always making more than 10 knots an hour between Brindisi and Suez, and 9.5 between Suez and Bombay. 2 men were promenading up and down the wharves among the crowd of natives and strangers who were sojourning at this once straggling village, now, thanks to the enterprise of Monsieur Lepay, a fast-growing town. One was the British consul at Suez, who, despite the prophecies of the English government and the unfavorable predictions of Stevenson, was in the habit of seeing from his office window English ships daily passing to and fro on the Great Canal, by which the old roundabout route from England to India by the Cape of Good Hope was abridged by at least half. The other was a small, slight-built personage with a nervous, intelligent face and bright eyes peering out from under eyebrows, which he was incessantly twitching. He was just now manifesting unmistakable signs of impatience, nervously pacing up and down and unable to stand still for a moment. This was Fix, one of the detectives who had been dispatched from England in search of the bank robber. It was his task to narrowly watch every passenger who arrived at Suez, and to follow up all who seemed to be suspicious characters or bore a resemblance to the description of the criminal, which he had received 2 days before from the police headquarters at London. The detective was evidently inspired by the hope of obtaining the splendid reward which would be the prize of success, and awaited with a feverish impatience, easy to understand, the arrival of the steamer Mongolia. "So you say, Consul," asked he for the 20th time, "that this steamer is never behind time?" "No, Mr. Fix," replied the consul. "She was bespoken yesterday at Port Said, and the rest of the way is of no account to such a craft. I repeat that the Mongolia has been in advance of the time acquired by the company's regulations, and gained the prize awarded for excesses of speed." "Does she come directly from Brindisi?" "Directly from Brindisi. She takes on the Indian mails there, and she left there Saturday at 5 p.m. Have patience, Mr. Fix. She will not be late. But really, I don't see how, from the description you have, you will be able to recognize your man, even if he is on board the Mongolia." "A man rather feels the presence of these fellows, Consul, than recognizes them. You must have a scent for them, and a scent is like a sixth sense, which combines hearing, seeing, and smelling. I've arrested more than one of these gentlemen in my time, and if my thief is on board, I'll answer for it. He'll not slip through my fingers." "I hope so, Mr. Fix, for it was a heavy robbery." "A magnificent robbery, Consul, £55,000. We don't often have such windfalls. Burglars are getting to be so contemptible nowadays. A fellow gets hung for a handful of shillings." "Mr. Fix," said the consul, "I like your way of talking, and hope you'll succeed, but I fear you will find it far from easy. Don't you see? The description which you have there has a singular resemblance to an honest man." "Consul," remarked the detective dogmatically, "great robbers always resemble honest folk. Fellows who have rascally faces have only one course to take, and that is to remain honest. Otherwise they would be arrested offhand. The artistic thing is to unmask honest countenances. It's no light task, I admit, but a real art." Mr. Fix evidently was not wanting in a tinge of self-conceit. Little by little, the scene on the quay became more animated. Sailors of various nations, merchants, shipbrokers, porters, fellahs, bustled to and fro as if the steamer were immediately expected. The weather was clear and slightly chilly. The minarets of the town loomed above the houses in the pale rays of the sun. A jetty pier some 2,000 yards long extended into the roadstead. A number of fishing smacks and coasting boats, some retaining the fantastic fashion of ancient galleys, were discernible on the Red Sea. As he passed among the busy crowd, Fix, according to habit, scrutinized the passers-by with keen, rapid glance. It was now 10:30. "The steamer doesn't come," he exclaimed, as the port clock struck. "She can't be far off now," returned his companion. "How long will she stop at Suez?" 4 hours, long enough to get in her coal. It is 1,310 miles from Suez to Aden, at the other end of the Red Sea, and she has to take in a fresh coal supply. And does she go from Suez directly to Bombay, without putting in anywhere? "Good," said Fix. "If the robber is on board, he will no doubt get off at Suez, so as to reach the Dutch or French colonies in Asia by some other route. He ought to know that he would not be safe an hour in India, which is English soil." "Unless," objected the consul, "he is exceptionally shrewd. An English criminal, you know, is always better concealed in London than anywhere else." This observation furnished the detective food for thought, and meanwhile the consul went away to his office. Fix, left alone, was more impatient than ever, having a presentiment that the robber was on board the Mongolia. If he had indeed left London, intending to reach the New World, he would naturally take the route via India, which was less watched and more difficult to watch than that of the Atlantic. But Fix's reflections were soon interrupted by a succession of sharp whistles which announced the arrival of the Mongolia. The porters and fellows rushed down the quay, and a dozen boats pushed off from the shore to go and meet the steamer. Soon her gigantic hull appeared passing along between the banks, and 11 o'clock struck as she anchored in the road. She brought an unusual number of passengers, some of whom remained on deck to scan the picturesque panorama of the town, while the greater part disembarked in the boats and landed on the quay. Fix took up a position and carefully examined each face and figure which made its appearance. Presently, one of the passengers, after vigorously pushing his way through the inopportune crowd of porters, came up to him and politely asked if he could point out the English consulate, at the same time showing a passport which he wished to have visaed. Fix instinctively took the passport, and with a rapid glance read the description of its bearer. An involuntary motion of surprise nearly escaped him, for the description in the passport was identical to that of the bank robber which he had received from Scotland Yard. "Is this your passport?" asked he. "No, it's my master's." "And your master is—" "He stayed on board. But he must go to the consul's in person, so as to establish his identity." "Oh, is that necessary?" "Quite indispensable." "And where is the consulate?" "There, on the corner of the square," said Fix, pointing to a house 200 steps off. "Oh, I'll go and fetch my master, who won't be much pleased, however, to be disturbed." The passenger bowed to Fix and returned to the steamer. And of course, I didn't say it in the really poor French accent that I've been using, but that was, of course, Passepartout. So now we're on chapter 7, which once more demonstrates the uselessness of passports as aids to detectives. The detective passed down the quay and rapidly made his way to the consul's office, where he was at once admitted to the presence of that official. "Consul," said he without preamble, "I have strong reasons for believing that my man is a passenger on the Mongolia," and he narrated what had just passed concerning the passport. "Well, Mr. Fix," replied the consul, "I shall not be sorry to see the rascal's face, but perhaps he won't come here, that is, if he is the person you suppose him to be. A robber doesn't quite like to leave traces of his flight behind him, and besides, he is not obliged to have his passport countersigned. If he is as shrewd as I think he is, consul, he will come." "To have his passport visaed?" "Yes, passports are only good for annoying honest folk and aiding in the flight of rogues. I assure you it will be quite the thing for him to do, but I hope you will not visa the passport." "Why not?" "If the passport is genuine, I have no right to refuse." "Still, if I must keep this man here until I get a warrant to arrest him from London." "Ah, that's your lookout, but I cannot—" The consul did not finish his sentence, for as he spoke a knock was heard at the door, and two strangers entered, one of whom was the servant whom Fix had met on the quay. The other, who was his master, held out his passport with the request that the consul would do him the favor to visa it. The consul took the document and carefully read it, whilst Fix observed, or rather devoured, the stranger with his eyes from a corner of the room. "You are Mr. Phileas Fogg?" said the consul, after reading the passport. "I am." "And this man is your servant?" "He is, a Frenchman named Passepartout." "You are from London?" "Yes." "And you are going to Bombay?" "Very good, sir. You know that a visa is useless, and that no passport is required." "I know it, sir," replied Phileas Fogg, "but I wish to prove, by your visa, that I came by Suez." "Very well, sir." The consul proceeded to sign and date the passport, after which he added his official seal. Mr. Fogg paid the customary fee, coldly bowed, and went out, followed by his servant. "Well?" queried the detective. "Well, he looks and acts like a perfectly honest man," replied the consul. "Possibly. But that is not the question. Do you think, consul, that this phlegmatic gentleman resembles, feature by feature, the robber whose description I have received?" "I concede that. But then, you know all descriptions." "I'll make certain of it," interrupted Fix. "The servant seems to me less mysterious than the master. Besides, he's a Frenchman, and can't help talking. Excuse me for a little while, consul." Fix started off in search of Passepartout. Meanwhile, Mr. Fogg, after leaving the consulate, repaired to the quay, gave some orders to Passepartout, went off to the Mongolia in a boat, and descended to his cabin. He took up his notebook, which contained the following memoranda. Left London, Wednesday, October 2nd, at 8:45 p.m. Reached Paris, Thursday, October 3rd, at 7:20 a.m. Left Paris, Thursday, at 8:40 a.m. Reached Turin by Mont-Cenis, Friday, October 4th, at 6:35 a.m. Left Turin, Friday, at 7:20 a.m. Arrived at Brindisi, Saturday, October 5th, at 4 p.m. Sailed on the Mongolia, Saturday, at 5 p.m. Reached Suez, Wednesday, October 9th, at 11 a.m. Total of hours spent, 158 and 1/2, or in days, 6 days and a half. These dates were inscribed in an itinerary divided into columns indicating the month, the day of the month, and the day for the stipulated and actual arrivals at each principal port: Paris, Brindisi, Suez, Bombay, Calcutta, Singapore, Hong Kong, Yokohama, San Francisco, New York, and London, from the 2nd of October to the 21st of December, and giving a space for setting down the gain made or the loss suffered on arrival at each locality. This methodical record thus contained an account of everything needed, and Mr. Fogg always knew whether he was behind or in advance of his time. On this Friday, October 9th, he noted his arrival at Suez, and observed that he had as yet neither gained nor lost. He sat down quietly to breakfast in his cabin, never once thinking or inspecting the town, being one of those Englishmen who are wont to see foreign countries through the eyes of their domestics. That is the end of chapter 7, and that is where we will end this evening. I know it's a short reading, but we will continue tomorrow. I hope you're enjoying the reading of Around the World in 80 Days, and God bless you. Have a great night.